A question, let's start with you, Professor Chomsky. The Nicaraguan government official who recently defected has stated that regardless of peace efforts, the Nicaraguan government will pursue a policy of military expansion with the Soviet Union. Why or why shouldn't, with the Soviet Union, why or why shouldn't we believe their claims that this is to be a defensive force?
Well, he's speaking of Colonel Miranda, who did not state, read the documents that he produced, he did not state or in any way imply that Nicaragua was intending, regardless of peace, to carry out a policy of military expansion with the Soviet Union. What Miranda stated, true or false, was the following. First, in fact, the only newsworthy and, in fact, novel statement that he produced was that the United States had been vastly exaggerating the number of Cuban and Soviet advisors in Nicaragua, which is much lower than what the United States had claimed, according to him, and approximately what Nicaragua had stated. He said that if in the coming years, if the Contra war declines, Nicaragua would reduce the size of its military forces. That was what he stated. It would reduce the size of its military forces, and it would provide light arms to the civilian population to defend the country against the threat which continues and is constantly raised, the threat of a possible U.S. Military invasion. That means they would try to turn the country into something roughly like Israel, a nation under arms, but of course at a much lower level of military armament. He stated that Nicaragua was the only place where the Soviet Union came into this. As he stated that Nicaragua intended to obtain MiG aircraft, jet interceptors. However, he did not state, and you can easily discover if you want, that Nicaragua would be delighted to obtain French Mirage interceptors. They've repeatedly said that. They don't care whether the interceptors they get come from France or the Soviet Union. They'd, in fact, prefer to get them from France because that would terminate the propaganda about their being a client of the Soviet Union. So the fact is they want jet interceptors. Since we've blocked our allies from sending them to them, they're going to turn to the Soviet Union. Why do they need jet interceptors? Well, because at that time, for all we know today, but certainly at that time, the CIA was flying planes into Nicaragua at the level of 2 to 3 a day to provide supplies for the terrorist forces that we had established in the country. That's an enormous supply effort. It was combined with an enormous surveillance effort to provide the Contras with information in real time, sophisticated communication equipment, to provide them with information in real time about the deployment of Sandinista forces so they could proceed to attack soft targets in accord with our directives. And it's well known that the only way that they can try to protect their territory against constant military intrusion by the United States is with jet interceptors. There's no other way to do it. Yes, they're trying to defend their territory. That's essentially the gist of the Miranda exposures. It's kind of interesting that the United States regarded that as scandalous. See, we regard it as scandalous for any country to be able to defend themselves against our attack. If any country tries to obtain planes from France or anyone else to defend itself against our attack, that's a scandal. We've got to destroy them. How can we tolerate this threat to our existence? Let me suggest a question to you. Take the way we talk about this Miranda exposure and about Nicaragua in general, and let's try the following thought experiment. Suppose that there was a debate going on in the Soviet Union about Luxembourg, in which they said, look, Luxembourg is an advanced industrial power linked to the United States, part of a hostile military alliance, Denmark even worse, planes and so on and so forth, tremendous threat to Soviet security. Obviously, we've got to organize a terrorist force to undermine them. Maybe, in fact, given the scale of the threat they pose as compared with the threat Nicaragua poses to us, maybe we would actually, nuke them or something like that. If a debate then, in fact, suppose it went on to say, well, look, if Luxembourg or Denmark obtain jet planes, well, then obviously we've got to bomb them into the sea. How can we tolerate that kind of threat? If a discussion like that were going on in the Soviet Union, how would we react, as far as I know, non-existent Soviet discussion, and see what conclusions you draw about our own political culture from that?
Mr. Perle, what about, shouldn't we believe a defecting Nicaraguan official about their intentions to follow a policy of military expansion with the Soviet Union?
Yes.